Oh, hey there, folks. How's it going? Oops. Okay. Hello, folks. Hope you can hear me fine. Hey, Grianis. Nice to see you. Hello to everybody on Instagram. Hey, Aphrodisiac. Good to see you live. So, what I plan to do today is show you some of the tools that I just picked up and the tools that they're going to be replacing. So first and most obviously, I'm very excited about this guy. This is a tool called the Indispensable. It is a clicking knife. It's made by, oh my goodness, what's the name? Vergis Blanchard. It's a classic knife for for cutting out patterns in leather. Honestly, this is actually kind of the knife on which modern X-Acto knives, on which modern craft knives like this were based. And I decided it was time for an upgrade. So, most of you know what a craft knife is. It's got a replaceable blade. These are cheap, these are quick, these are easy. But every time you want to have a new blade, you take this out. This is, to me, a lot of steel that's getting thrown away. I have been using this same craft knife since I started. You can see down here, it cost me $3.27. $3.27 for this, and I think it came with like a pack of 10 blades or something like that. I then went to Uline. Uline being a, well, it's not a brand I like to support anymore because of their political donations. So I waited until I was out of this pack of 100 blades that I bought from them. And I bought this years ago. I'm down to... Here. Still got everything all lined up. I'm down to 2 blades. So I figured, considering the fact that I burn through, even with my stropping techniques, I burned through 3 or 4 of these a week. I knew it was time to buy an upgrade that was going to last me a lot longer. So, going from $327 for the knife, plus, I don't know, I think this was like $10 for the blades. I then upgraded to, like I said, the indispensable. This cost me $75.99 because I opted to buy this from Rocky Mountain Leather Supply. I've been buying tools and leather from them for years, and I absolutely love them. So not only is this the indispensable handle, you may be able to see here, this is a custom blade from Chartermade Studios, which is a South African blade making studio, knife making studio that makes some absolutely spectacular stuff. This is a replacement blade that they made custom for this handle. It is incredibly sharp. I'm gonna go through the prices of all of these things and compare them up front, and then I'll show you the actual functionality of these things in more detail. But you might be wondering where the blade is. The blade is stored inside the handle. So you have these little tension screws, these little pressure screws that lock the blade in place. And then you can extend the blade and set it. Now, instead of replacing the blade when it goes dull, you instead take this out and you sharpen it on a whetstone or a strop. And that allows you to keep a much, 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 much keener edge than on something like this. Now, to compare, well, I said that I'd compare the functionality later. I'm just going to put this down for now so I don't hurt myself with the incredibly sharp blades. Moving on next, these are just two things. Well, this is a needle case that I've had for a long time, and I am a big advocate of needle cases, simply because we all try to have, we buy a pack of needles and then we keep it in the paper that it comes in. The paper falls apart and then you get needles everywhere. And the number of times that I've almost put a needle in my foot because one fell out of the paper while I was carrying the packaging around is far too many. These only cost like $6.50, $7. I picked up one of these years ago. I've been using it. You can see it's super dark because I handle it all the time. I partitioned out the interior with a little bit of paper. So I have my longest and largest Sadler's needles in this little pocket here, and then my number 2 John James needles, which are my most common ones, I have to the side. And then I picked up a second case because I wanted one that would have my dead needles in it. So dead needles are needles that have a little bit of a bend or kink in them. They're no longer usable to me for stitching, but they are usable for aligning stitching holes, as I've shown you before when I've been doing these masks. This one actually has all my new needles in it, and this is the older one, has all my dead needles in it. So yeah, I don't need to show you what the inside of that looks like. It's, the same thing. But for like $7, these, I think, really drastically improved my organization, a surprising amount. Not lastly, next up we have these two things. This one is a homemade sanding block, a little detail sander that I made. It's just got some angles to it that allow me to sand edges and corners very effectively. So this is literally a scrap piece of cedar that I sanded and cut and planed into a new shape, then put my brand on, and double-sided tape some 220 grit sanding paper to it. This is an awesome little roughing tool, and this is a great little sanding block. But one of the problems is that you have to replace or clean the sandpaper pretty regularly, which I don't like. This is a roughing tool. It is specifically I believe, laser micro-etched roughing surface. So it's going to be hard to see in these cameras. But there is a very, very fine abrasive pattern etched into that surface, which is, I brought the 10 millimeter wide version, so it's a 10 millimeter width. And the purpose of this tool is, let me grab a piece of leather. There you go. When you are trying to glue two pieces of leather together, you can hold this on the edge and you rough up the surface, and it makes the glue bond much, much stronger. It's also used for raising the fuzz on the back. As you can see, that raises up the fluff, the suede on the back of the piece of leather. It has many different functions. But this, in theory, will never wear out, so long as I, am nice to it and I don't, bang it around. I'm going to make a little leather sleeve for this. Maybe that's what this piece of leather becomes. Just to protect the tip. But this is going to last me a lot longer, and in the long run, this cost me $16. I can't really put a price on this, but this means I'm going to be wasting less sandpaper on doing my edges, or I'm sorry, not my edges, but on gluing and roughing my edges, which is good. So, next up is one that I'm very excited about. These two squares. So this one cost me $9. I got it on Amazon years and years ago. You can see it's a Johnson brand. It has a black coating on a steel rule. It has paint markings, which you can see have all but worn off in this area. They're just gone. That's not the shine. My hands have been on this so long that I've polished down to the black base coat. Which means that for this area where the vast majority of my measurements are being made within the 1 to 4 inch range, this is now basically useless if I'm looking for measurements. For squares, for cutting, sure, fine. This will still have its purpose. I'll maybe put this in the beater drawer. I spent $15. It's not that much. It's only $6 more than the painted version. This is another tool that I picked up from Rocky Mountain Tanners. I'm sorry, Rocky Mountain Leather. I don't think they're Rocky Mountain Tanners anymore. And this is a steel rule that it's from Venka, V-E-N-C-A. It has etched markings. Now, I'm going to go in and have to polish these edges to make them as flat and as smooth as I want them to be, and to make sure that they are truly square. Because there is a little bit of a rough texture from where this square was, I believe, cut out. I'm not sure if this was CNC'd or plasma cut. It feels like it might be a plasma cut edge because it's got a little bit of a wavy texture to it. Which for me is okay, but I really, really prefer smoothness on the edges of my tools. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to polish these flat with some lapping sheets. Make sure that they are nice and square. And then this will be perfect. It will never lose its marks. I will never have to guess as to where one of these marks is because the paint has worn off. You can slot a blade directly in to one of these marks because they are actually etched into the steel, which is great. That makes me happy. So for $15, I think that this is a massive improvement, even though effectively they do the same thing. They are very similar to the same tool, but this one will last for much longer. I wish I had spent the extra $6, or I wish I had known about this back then. I thought that this was going to be a better purchase, but it wore out too quickly for me. It's the reason that I go with either all etched steel or at very least Starrett. If you know Starrett as a brand, their rules are wonderful. All right, so I'm going to get this all out of the way, the stuff that I'm not demonstrating at this point, and I'm going to demonstrate the difference between these two blades. I'm going to use this piece of leather that I had out already. So, move these to the side. Clean that. All right, so this is a fresh blade. I haven't stropped it. So this is right out of the pack, fresh. Just what a craft blade from Uline is going to do to a... let's see, how heavy is this? Hi. Okay, there. Alright, so this is just under 2 millimeters, 1.92, 1.95, 1.88, so it's a little thinner over on this side. Anyways, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply my hand's weight of pressure. I have a relatively loose grip on this knife. It is braced by my middle finger. It's held in the crook of my thumb, and I have just the weight of my finger, my right finger on top of that. I'm going to be pressing down with just the weight of my hand and allowing that to cut through the leather. Okay, that did not cut fully through. It cut maybe a quarter of the way, or half the way. So I'm applying a little bit more pressure. And there. That's a pretty good cut. Pretty clean. Didn't require much force. So if I go through and I try to do that again, but with just a little bit more pressure applied, I should be able to cut. Ooh, I didn't apply quite as much as I should have at the start. I should be able to cut through leather like this in one fell swoop. One move. With a little bit of pressure. Now, of course, this handle is going to have quite a bit more weight to it than this handle does. This is aluminum, this is solid brass, and a steel blade. So, this is going to apply more weight on its own and essentially aid my hand in cutting into the leather. But in addition to that, this blade has better blade geometry, has a much keener and finer edge that is hand polished, and the geometry of the handle is such that my finger, my index finger rests just on top of the spine of the handle right here. My thumb is right here on top of the logo, and then my other finger, similar to before, is bracing where the blade would be. But with this, the blade is actually a little offset from my finger, which is great, because this is a much stiffer blade and doesn't need the same support that this needs, which has much, much more flex to it. Sometimes that flex is a good thing. This blade has its purposes, and I'm not giving up on like craft blades. I'm just going to be using this a lot less often. Now, as with before, I'm going to just apply the weight of the tool and the weight of my hand. Actually, I'm going to pull back slightly. Ooh. Oops, I got off track. Yeah. That requires practically no weight. Let's see what happens if I draw it out here, which the farther out on the blade, or I'm sorry, on the handle you are, the more the weight of the handle is doing the work. Wow. It's an incredibly sharp blade, if I can do that. Yeah, that's practically just the weight of the handle cutting through the leather. That was me applying a little bit more pressure with my index finger, as you would probably see. But yeah, that is incredibly sharp. One thing I like about the geometry of this handle is that it makes it much easier for the asymmetrical blade to make a straight up and down cut. Yeah, it's a very nice blade. So, and like I was saying, one of the great things about this blade is that, or about this knife, is that you can take this out and you have this much blade material. And you're going to be able to use this blade right up until that last bit right there. Right up until the logo. So this should last me for probably decades. Though with the way that I sharpen my tools and the speed with which I work through blades, maybe it might be a little less than decades. Maybe just 1 decade. But yeah, I'm incredibly excited about this tool, if nothing else. It's going to really speed up the time it takes me to click out patterns. The ease with which that cuts curves is a little scary. And I love the geometry on this blade with the clipped back, almost bird's beak style tip on that. That means that I can smoothly move without worrying about chipping that blade, which is very, very cool to me. One of the things that happens a lot with X-Acto blades is that when you put the tip into your cutting mat and then turn a little bit, it'll snap that tip off. So I've actually gotten into the habit a lot of the time with these blades because that's such a fine tip, and that's great for, you know, picking, and that's wonderful for super detail work. But I'll oftentimes actually clip and cut that tip back to make it a little bit more like the geometry of this Charter blade, this Charter-made blade. So I'm going to let you guys know how I really feel about this, obviously after putting a little bit more work on it. But I just got this yesterday, and I'm super excited. Now, if I were to make some comparisons between these tools and ask myself, like, do I wish I had bought the indispensable blade or the indispensable knife, 9 years ago? I wish I had had it 9 years ago, but I don't feel that this was a necessary purchase. If you're just new to leatherworking, if you're just getting your feet on the ground, so to speak, if you're just picking out your first tools, this is going to be a little bit wasted. You have to know how to use a knife like this effectively so that you don't break the blade, and so that you are sharpening it in such a way and maintaining it in such a way that it continues to be the tool that it is right out of the box. So I would actually advise against getting a blade or a knife like this right off the bat. I honestly think that craft blades like this are some of the best investments you can buy. If you can spend a little extra, not, $327, go with something with a weightier handle, something more substantial. I found that working with this is a little rough on the thumbs, a little rough on the fingers, and even with an elongated grip like the one that I use, which is a very relaxed grip, I find that this still is harder on the hand. You'll notice that I'm pushing my thumb in more to maintain grip here. And I feel like that's part of the reason I've been having some thumb pain right here along the exterior part of my hand. So while I think that these are, a little rough on the hands, they're not the best option. If you can, I actually suggest sticking with these for a really long time. Just make sure to get something with a good handle that's nice on your hands. Anything with a little bit more weight is going to make it easier to cut, and without applying as much pressure. If you can get good quality steel blades that can be stropped, your X-Acto blades, your craft blades are going to last a lot longer if you take just a piece of leather, you strop your blades from time to time. Like every, half an hour of actual work, doing this alone is going to make cutting through heavy leather and all leather much better. And as you learn to maintain these blades and keep them alive for longer, you will learn how to sharpen and strop blades more effectively. Start with this, get a decent one, get one with a little bit of weight. It'll treat you well for years to come. Buy a good pack of blades, and then when you run out of these, consider if you need to invest for your hands, or if you want to invest in something that's going to cut a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more easily, and is going to make you want to work. Like this kind of tool makes me want to pick it up and start cutting leather, as is obvious. Where this tool, it's fine. It just kind of makes me go, ugh, all right, time to do some picking work or time to do some cutting work, because I know my finger's going to hurt at the end of it. So, now I'm just repeating myself. I'm going to put these blades away before I hurt myself. As I said, I really do suggest, if you can, spend a little bit of extra money rather than buying the cheapest, like $10 square. Spend a little bit of extra money. Buy a Starrett. Spend somewhere between 16, $50, depending on how expensive you want to go. But this thing cost me $15, and this is going to be the last small square I buy for a really long time. So, worth spending the money in that area. What else did I grab? Like I said, this guy's just a great little tool. You don't need it. It's very much it's a very affordable tool that's right in line with like edge rounders, etc. That they're going to change the way you do your work, and they're going to speed up your process considerably. So this rougher tool, I think, is a worthwhile investment at $16. I don't think you need it like first day. If you're just starting leatherwork right out the bat, get some sandpaper. Get a variety of sandpapers between like 150 will rough anything, and then all the way up to, I suggest at least like 400. 400 will help you when it comes to polishing edges. But if you get like 150, 180, like 150, 220, 300, 400, that covers most sanding jobs that leather workers need to do, including roughing leather for gluing jobs. This is a wonderful little tool. It's not particularly necessary. If you're just starting out, I don't really think it's worth spending the money. It's nice to have, though. Instead, spend the same money on 2 of these. I mean that seriously. If you're doing hand stitching, I love needle cases. This is a nice luxury, but I'm really only going to use this maybe once or twice a week. As compared to this, I'm going to be grabbing probably every day for the next few months. What else do I have? I think that's it for now. So, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I am actually going to take a little bit of a break. You know what? I'm actually going to go over one of the tools that I get the most questions about, and that would be my pattern knife, my skiving knife. Here. So this knife is the knife that I use basically all the time, more than almost any other. That might change with the indispensable, but I use this more than any other because it's the most versatile. It allows me not only to do my pattern cutting and clicking cuts with my corners, but also it allows me to do skiving, it allows me to do planing. The Japanese style, Korean style utility knife, leather knife. I know, what do you want to call this? Skiving knife? I don't know. This is a style of utility knife that winds up getting used in a lot of different craft trades. It's been adopted very strongly as a leather knife specifically. I'm not even sure where I was going with that. I think because I was just trying to explain why I was giving it so many different names. Yeah, this is just my general utility knife. I use it for literally everything. I bought this, I've talked about it before, in Kyoto 4 years ago at this point. You can see that I made a sheath for it, and over the course of 4 years I have taken off that much, and I have adjusted the angle of the blade ever so slightly. Let me get that better in frame and in light. So you can see that this gap here is because the blade has been polished and sharpened back. Now, so most people use this for skiving, I would say. Like, that is one of the uses of this tool. This is a skiver. I think it's called a speedy skiver or a handy skiver. It's from C.S. Osborne. It's a C.S. Osborne 925. It is a very cheap little tool that is super useful to have around, though I've honestly almost entirely stopped using this when it comes to skiving and feathering edges. I'll use it from time to time. It has replaceable blades that you need a screwdriver or a pair of pliers to pull out. You buy these blades in packs of, preferably in huge packs of 100. I buy them direct from the factory, and they're super cheap It's another area where, here, I've got a little, actually it's an old little cigar box in which I keep all my little blades. So this is 100 Skyver blades from CS Osborne. I bought this like probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that shows you how often I use this thing. I've never run out of a box of these. And these are the US made blades that I use for my utility knives. That doesn't matter right now. Anyways, so similar to the X-Acto knife, similar to the craft knife, these are great introductory tools. You don't need to buy an expensive Japanese blade with, you know, white or blue Japanese steel. You don't need to worry about any of that. If you have a craft knife, a box cutter, and the CS Osborne Skyver right here, you can buy all of that for under, like, what, $30 with some decent blades, and that'll treat you well for years. Learn to use these tools, mess up with these tools, mess up these tools, so that by the time you are ready and you know that you want to devote enough of your income, enough of your time, enough of your attention to leathercraft, to whatever hobby you're doing, then reinvest a little bit of that energy and that time, and hopefully some of the money that you've made back into better tools. It'll make a difference, but really only once you know how to use them. So, I think that's it. I've been ranting for about half an hour at this point, which means I'm coming close to my attention limit. So I am going to take a break. I'm actually going to go grab some lunch. It's 11:35 here in Southern California. I wish you all well. Be well, do good. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a nice one, folks.